Holocaust survivors will gather at Auschwitz to mark the 75th anniversary of the concentration camp's liberation. More than 1 million people were killed in that camp alone.
Looking at Auschwitz today, it's almost impossible to imagine the horror that occurred here. But for those who suffered at the hands of the Nazis, it's impossible to forget. Men, women and children starved, experimented on and murdered. 1.1 million people were killed here, gassed or placed against walls and shot. But some did survive and will return to mark the 75th anniversary of the camp's liberation. Amongst them, 93-year-old Alberto Israel, who now lives in Brussels. He shows us the tattoo on his arm that marked him out as a Jew in Auschwitz. That, along with the mental scars, will last a lifetime.
La seule chose que tous les rescapés, avec tout ce que je parlais, la chose la plus horrible pour nous, la punition la plus, c'était un cauchemar. Encore aujourd'hui, je n'arrête pas.
Alberto lost his family to the Nazis. His parents and one brother killed here at Auschwitz, the camp which became the most potent symbol of the Holocaust, a place where age was no barrier to the brutality. All of the children bar one in this photo were murdered. The sole survivor, Albert Rez, now in his 80s. He escaped Auschwitz only because a Catholic family in Brussels took him in, aged 3. He became one of the so-called enfants cachés, the hidden children.
People who were hiding Jews, how can I say, they were condemned at the minimum to go to jail, but normally they were simply shooting down. They put them against a wall. So they were really risking their life.
What happened here was killing on an industrial scale. The living survivors of Auschwitz are now well into old age, but many of them make the difficult journey here, not just to remember the victims, but as a warning to future generations of where political extremism can lead. Their hope is Europe will never witness genocide again. Michelle Clifford, Sky News, Auschwitz, Poland.
Joining me now from Melbourne is Jayne Josem, Museum Director at the Jewish Holocaust Centre. Jayne, thanks very much for your time. The 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the Holocaust Memorial, I know your commitment is to ensure that the awareness remains in our community and to say never again.
Absolutely. The Holocaust survivors who came to Melbourne, came to Australia, set up Holocaust museums, and one in Melbourne, one in Sydney, and implored us to keep educating, to talk to mainly students, but adults as well, about what happened to them in the hope that, you know, we can prevent future atrocities.
And in terms of your museum, how are you marking this solemn occasion?
There's a communal celebration or commemoration tonight where over 600 people will be gathering to pay respects, to hear from a survivor, and, you know, the immense interest because of the 75th anniversary is almost overwhelming. But we do this day in, day out at the Holocaust Museum, talk to students, talk to adults, trying to educate as many people as possible.
As you said, your museum was established by survivors. How important is it that their voices continue to be heard today, tomorrow, into the future?
Look, it's an immense challenge. They have been speaking for many years. They've written books, they've given their eyewitness testimony, and they come and speak directly to students who have the opportunity to ask questions of them. It's absolutely vital to be able to hear from people. Like, museums share these stories, and it's through the stories that I think people really can access history. So we are at pains to kind of think of how we're going to do this in the future, and obviously there's a number of ways we're looking at, including in recent times we took a survivor with us back to his hometown and back to Auschwitz and filmed him using virtual reality technology so that students will have the chance to really immerse themselves and be in Auschwitz and hear this survivor talking to them.
It's hard to imagine that you'd have to deal with this, but as you well know, as someone who has been a director of this museum for some time, one of the challenges is dealing with some misinformation that's propagated as well.
Well, one of the reasons that we're at pains to kind of have students come through and see the original artefacts, we have like an amazing collection of artefacts and documents that survivors brought with us to Australia, but equally providing access to all the amazing documentation that exists all over the world. So even as a research centre, we can help people to access the evidence that is out there. And if you go to Germany, I mean, or Eastern Europe, you can find the evidence in archives there. It is shocking to think that people try and deny this. It's really disgusting.
It really is disgusting, and when we look at, reflect on the numbers of people that we're talking about, 6 million Jews, 1.5 million of those were children.
It's unprecedented. There are no words, and the survivors, that's the reason that they come every week and open up to these painful memories, because you know, they had brothers, sisters, young siblings that were murdered, and it's sort of unconscionable to think of that.
Jayne Josem, Director at the Holocaust Museum in Melbourne, we wish you all the very best in your efforts to keep that awareness going on this, the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Thank you.